BYU is in a very, very advantageous spot looking ahead to the 2026 season. Remember, they're bringing back the vast majority of their talent, and this is a squad that just went 12-2 and was right on the doorstep once again for the second straight year of the college football playoff. They played for Big 12 championship down there at AT&T Stadium, and with the amount of talent returning to BYU, with some holes obviously to fill, things are looking on the up and up for BYU football, and you don't have to look very far other than what on3.com did yesterday. They put together a composite way too early 2026 college football top 25. So what they did is they took all these way too early top 25 polls, including their own. Let's see, they also have Yahoo Sports in here, ESPN, Fox Sports, The Athletic, USA Today, etc. So we're talking the major publications out there that put out these way too early top 25 polls, and they put the rankings together and came up with a composite where these teams slot in terms of overall points. And the BYU football program, well, if the composite ranking holds here, BYU would find themselves right on the perch of playing in the CFP as the number 11 team in the country. Now, spare me, you're saying, well, 11, Jake, that's not good enough, because obviously the G6 champion, one of the G6 champions, would surpass them. Notre Dame has a memorandum of understanding from the College Football Playoff Committee. If they're inside the top 12, they're guaranteed a spot in next year's tournament. And oh, by the way, the four conference champions, regardless of record, let's say Duke this past year, who went 7-5 in the regular season, 8-5 after winning the ACC title, they would have forced their way into the playoff field. So BYU at 11 is not ideal if it were to hold here, but the thing I'm trying to convey to you is that BYU checking in at 11 here shows that they are consensus the number 2 team in the Big 12. And it's not even close, because you look at the rest of the rankings, where is the next Big 12 team? Oh, wait, tied for 18th, the Utah Utes. They are tied for 18th here. Then you have to go to 24 before you get to Houston. So there are 4, count them 4, Big 12 teams in this composite top 25 ranking. Texas Tech at 7, BYU at 11, as I mentioned, Utah tied for 18th with Washington, and the University of Houston at 24. Those are good spots for each of these programs, in theory, to start out the 2026 season. But the good news in particular about BYU is, yes, Notre Dame, number 6 in this composite poll. So they're 5 spots higher than BYU, but BYU will get them on their home field. And BYU will have an opportunity against Utah. They will have an opportunity to notch some pretty incredible wins, but BYU also has a fairly manageable schedule with regards to where these games lay out. Yes, they open up Big 12 play with a toughie that I'm not sure why Arizona is not necessarily on this list. I think Arizona is very capable of being a top 25 team, and BYU will have to face them week 2 of the season. But you look at the rest of the way, they're going to obviously have tough games against Arizona State, against Utah, against Notre Dame. And the nice part is, each of those games seems to be stratified outside of the back-to-back you have with Arizona State and Utah in back-to-back weeks, of having manageable games around them to help you hopefully put together the season that you want to have, speaking of the BYU football program. And that's going to be fun to watch, how this BYU team develops. But if they win at the level they appear to be capable of this coming season, if they start out inside, I'd say the top 15 minimum, BYU very well could easily be inside the top 10 and sit there for a good long while this year. Now, we're talking months and months away from the start of the college football season, but the hope springs eternal for BYU football, especially considering what they've accomplished the past 2 years. And I know, and they said it last year, they said the goal for them was to win the Big 12 and to go to the college football playoff. They said they had a bad taste left in their mouth from what happened in 2024. Well, they didn't accomplish it in 2025 in terms of winning the Big 12 and making the CFP. So that bad taste still lingers to a degree, but that's only going to motivate them that much more to break through here. Yes, you lose guys like a Tanner Wall, a Jack Kelly, a Chase Roberts from last year's squad, but you just reload. You're led by the big reigning offensive player of the year in LJ Martin. You've got Bear Bachmeier, who, if he has finally a full offseason of training, going through BYU's offense, a full spring ball, who knows what he's capable of after putting up 3,500 total yards, showing up in mid-June last year and getting acclimated really, really quickly. I think the sky's the limit for that young man. And it doesn't even discount what BYU can do on defense. Isaiah Glasker had, I think, a down year in comparison to what he hoped he was going to accomplish. He's back for another tour of duty. Faletau Satuala, he was the breakout star defensively for BYU last year without a doubt. I think there's young talent in that defensive room like Nusi Taumoepeau, Tausili, Akana. There are a lot of really, really strong players on this BYU roster, and you can guarantee that they want to be the program, or speaking of the not the program, but they want to be the team in BYU football history that breaks through, maybe wins a Big 12 title, plays in the college football playoff, and being ranked 11th in this composite poll. Yeah, it's not going to immediately start yet at 11 because ultimately those polls will come out come late July. But this is a good spot for BYU to be perceived to be in at this juncture because it sets up for a strong offseason. Now, the concern I have and I harbor is if you look at these rankings, Ohio State's 1, Indiana's 2. So Big Ten atop the rankings. But then you have 3 and 4, Texas and Georgia. Then you have Oklahoma. Then A&M, Miami, Oklahoma. So just go down this list. There are 8. Count them. I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think there's 8. At least 7, but maybe 8 SEC teams here. There's a bevy of Big Ten teams as well. Michigan, for example, led by Kyle Whittingham, and obviously Jay Hill and Gennaro Guilford joining him there. Michigan's 14th here. The Big Two, as many people want to call them, the SEC and the Big Ten, they dominate these rankings. And obviously, those are going to dominate the headlines in terms of the storylines going into the season. But BYU is right there among the nation's elite, and they just have to prove they belong. And if what I expect holds true here is that if BYU starts inside the top 15 next year, so long as they win 10 plus games, which I think is the absolute expectation for BYU next season, they should find themselves inside that top 10 and comfortably, you hope, in terms of an at-large bid into the college football playoff. We'll see what happens, but I like where BYU's positioned right here. I like the talent on this BYU football squad, and I really do think they have got everything they need, at least from my vantage point, to go out there and really become a national force once again next season. They ultimately have to win the games. That is why the ball is teed up. That's why it kicks off in the month of September this year. I'm not going to have it. We'll have week 0 in August, but you get the point. We are months and months away from it, but I, for one, I'd never really want to fast forward through spring, summer, and the like, but I love football season. I think it comes across very, very clearly about my care factor for college football and for BYU football in particular. But this BYU football squad, they've accomplished some really, really incredible things the past 2 years, but it's teeing up for what could be a magical year in 2026. And fingers crossed it comes through and they're able to accomplish that. Because if they are, we could all be in for the ride of a lifetime. Quite literally, multiple generations have not seen BYU maybe rising, in theory, to the heights they could rise to this season. And I, for one, I'm ready for it. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the show. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic out there. Please continue to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Share it with your family and friends. And if you're so inclined, please consider joining the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. Obviously, supports the show, gets you insider access you won't find anywhere else if you go to the All Access tier. And obviously, a lot going on with BYU sports in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead, and we'll have it covered for you guys. So, as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. Go make your second listen today, Locked On College Football or Locked On Big 12. I'll let you make your choice there. But obviously, those programs doing incredible work. And as always, thank you for being an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.